is Miłosława Stępień, Miłka, and I am the Just Transition Coordinator for Central and Eastern Europe at the Bankwatch network, which means that I work on the Just Transition, well, throughout Central and Eastern Europe, but I also cooperate with some civic society organizations from other parts of Europe, for example, from Greece, Italy, and Spain. And I try to know as much about the Just Transition throughout the European Union. Just transition is generally a concept that was developed by trade unions initially. And it is a concept that if you are phasing out an industry or changing an industry significantly, then the impacts that this has on the people should be addressed. So initially it was primarily aimed to support people who were losing their jobs, mainly from the coal industry. So it was initially developed in mostly in the United States. And then it spread as a concept throughout the world, I would say. Right now, it's understood a bit differently by various people. So, you know, for the European Union, it has become linked primarily to the process that is going right now, which is a planned transition away from fossil fuels. For now, it's targeted primarily at the coal industry, oil shale, and peat industry. But it will also be used for some of the other transitions that are planned, for example, within the steel industry, chemicals industry, the cement industry. So because in the European Union they came to a decision that certain industries would be phased out, there was a lot of push from various circles that if something like this is planned, it is absolutely necessary to provide support for communities and for the people leaving the industries to manage the impacts that are related to such a transition. So the Just Transition Fund is primarily targeting solving certain or addressing the challenges of the process. They identified 4 primary areas of impacts. So these were employment impacts, economic impacts, social impacts, and environmental impacts. For me, I come from one of the Just Transition regions, actually, and before I became someone who works on the Just Transition throughout the European Union, I was primarily interested in what was happening in my region. So this is a lignite coal mining region in Poland, Eastern Wielkopolska. And there what happened was that, and I think this happened in a lot of Central and Eastern European countries, in the 1990s there was already a transformation happening. So there was the restructuring of the heavy industry generally, and this very strongly impacted the coal industry and the energy production industry. So a lot of people were laid off already then. And in many of these regions, a decline of the communities, of the social structure, lots of migration happened away from these regions. And this has been ongoing for 30 years. So as a local activist, also interested in environmental and ecological issues, I was looking at both the social impacts and how to address them, but also at the environmental impacts of so many years of extraction. So for me, the Just Transition process is an opportunity to finally address all of these impacts that, in my opinion, have been ongoing for decades. There are actually 92 Just Transition regions throughout the European Union. I work primarily on Central and Eastern Europe, and most of these regions are coal regions, so both hard coal and lignite coal. So some of these, the most important, I think, regions from this perspective would be the Polish ones, because as I'm sure you also know, here in Bulgaria, coal was a very, and is still a very important part of the energy production and the energy mix in Poland. So there are 5 just transition regions in Poland, but it very much depends on the country. So here in Bulgaria you have 3, so Pernik, Kustendil and Stara Zagora. But for example, you have 6 just transition regions in Romania, 3 of which are related to the coal industry. One of them is related to the chemicals industry, and one of them is related to the steel industry. So this shows that some of the countries have already decided to initiate the process of changing. Some of the other industries that I've mentioned will be, well, not so much phasing out, but changing their technologies. And this will also impact the local communities and societies and municipalities that have grown up around these industries. So it really depends on the country. In Czech Republic you have 3 regions. In Slovakia, I think it's also 3 regions. In Estonia, it's the only oil shale region that we cover. There's one region called Ida-Viru. So it's a very, very large variety of countries, and they're approaching it in very different ways. I think a very important sort of prerequisite for a good transition is that it receives support from all levels, and that it is a process that is well planned. So, for example, I think Spain is a really good example of this. They initiated the planning of the transition earlier than even the creation of the Just Transition Fund. It's a process that's written out for 2 decades. They set up an institute at the national level. This is the Just Transition Institute in Spain. And so they have a national level sort of plan for it. They have the Just Transition Fund, but they also have national funds that are used to support the transition. And local and regional governments and stakeholders are involved in the process of planning the transition. So this really creates a plan that, first of all, we know that such processes take years, but it has so many levels of involvement that it can take into account, the strengths that come from the national level, certain expertise, but also all of the knowledge of what is happening in the regions from the regional and local level. Another very important aspect is really the involvement of local communities. And a wide variety of people from the local communities. So it can't only be something that is run by the local self-governments. The more people are involved, the better. So if people from the mining and energy communities, former workers, are involved in the process, this adds a different perspective. If you have local civic society organizations and NGOs involved, they will bring in a different perspective. And local businesses, research institutions that are in the area or that work in these regions, they can provide a lot of expertise and additional perspectives, because developing such a plan for such a transition is a difficult process. So the more people you have in there, even if they don't always agree, the more possibility there is of addressing sometimes very difficult challenges. I think a great example of this is Jiu Valley in Romania. They have a process that was actually initiated by NGOs. They have something which is a coalition of local NGOs. They come from different sectors, so some of them are social workers, some of them work on very specific issues, some of them work on culture, and they do a lot of different types of projects, including, for example, cultural projects, which is really important also in such regions, that you don't just throw away the culture that has developed there for 100, sometimes over 120 years, as in this case actually. You look back at it and you create sort of a new approach to it in the new circumstances, that you show it respect, because these are frequently, your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents were somehow linked to the industry. I'm also from a mining family, so this is, in a way similar, and it resonates very strongly for me that communities Our parents, our grandparents were impacted very strongly by these industries. And even though I'm an environmentalist, this doesn't mean that I want to attack my father or attack my grandparents who were linked to the industry. I want to find a new way to address the problems, but also to show respect for my past. This is why I really like the cultural project. So for example, in Jew Valley, they do various local festivals. They have an abandoned building in one of the former mining towns. It's called Petrila. These are former mining buildings, and they're trying to create something like an artistic and cultural center there, where they can also, invite people to host conferences. Another really good idea from Jew Valley is the robotics valley. This is actually what they call it. So it's supposed to be a robotics hub. And this comes from the cooperation of these local NGOs with young people who are high school students. They participate in robotics competitions. So this means that they build their own robots, and then they compete against people from, well, nationally, but also internationally, showing what these robots can do. And they wanted to develop, based on this idea, they wanted to develop a further, really base on something that is already existing, develop it into something that has potential to create local businesses and local expertise. So the Just Transition Fund will actually fund the development of such a center. And generally, the issue of youth is one of the big problems or challenges in Just Transition regions, because as I mentioned earlier, frequently this has been a problem that they have been tackling for 30 years or more, as young people decide to leave the regions and frequently do not come back. So through such ideas, well, first of all, young people are given skills and knowledge that they can use if they decide to leave, but it can also create spaces to which people will want to return. And I think this is really important. A similar project also targeting young people is being developed in the Macedonian part of Greece, where they are looking at developing a youth hub, which is also targeting young people to develop their skills and ideas for future development. If we're looking at other aspects, then district heating is a very important issue for many Just Transition regions. This is mostly linked to the fact that before the district heating was developed not really developed, but more it was provided by the energy plants. So when you have coal-fired energy plants, this often meant that the district heating was provided as waste heat from these energy plants. So if you are closing down the energy plants, this means the collapse of the district heating systems. And this can lead to heating poverty, and it especially is a huge risk and threat for older people. And as we know, in these regions, these are frequently regions that have a growing population of senior citizens. There are both good and bad examples in almost all of the fields. One of the issues that worries me the most is rehabilitation or restoration of former mining sites. This is because we still do not have a lot of expertise and commitment to making sure that the environment is taken care of. One of the biggest issues that we've identified that is going to impact all of our communities throughout Europe is water. And mining regions have not been taking care of their water ecosystems. So this means that now in the rehabilitation processes, they also frequently don't. One of the examples that I myself have sort of worked on is an idea to redirect water from a river into one of the former mining pits so that the mining pit would be filled as quickly as possible with water. At the same time, there wasn't a very good environmental impact assessment done, so they didn't evaluate whether this would impact the river ecosystems. And as environmental NGOs, we said this was unacceptable because if the river ecosystem isn't functioning, it will also mean the death of all of the lakes in the region. Because the river ecosystem maintains the hydrological system within the whole region. So I think this is very dangerous, and it's very important to make sure that the impacts, the environmental impacts of various projects are looked at seriously, because it's not enough to fill a big hole. You have to really think about the other aspects that might be impacted by such projects. But at the same time, I know that there are some, I think it's a minority, unfortunately, there are some projects that attempt to address such issues as biodiversity loss or rebuilding wetlands. So I know of an example from the Midlands in Ireland, which was is phasing out the peat industry. And there's also another project from Estonia, from Ida-Virumaa, where they are trying to rebuild the water ecosystem and the way in which water is managed in the region. I think that the just transition should be looked at as a moment in which we are facing challenges that these regions have been experiencing for 30, 40 years. I think you need to change the way you see it. Because the transition didn't start now. The only thing that started now is that people are actually talking about it publicly, that they are facing it, and that we are talking about planning it. So I think this is the main thing that has changed, and that it should actually help alleviate fears in some way. I know it doesn't always work that way, because it's more comfortable sometimes or safer if you pretend that something is not happening. And I think as humans, this is a normal thing that we do. While in this case, we're saying, you know, something is going to end and you have to change your life. And you have to think about how to do it. So it takes a bit more effort from us, and it takes facing our fears, I think. So I really understand communities that are going through this. I live in a community like that. I talk with a lot of people who, you know, are worried about what is happening. Sometimes they would prefer to hear, oh, no, it's not going to happen. You will continue the way that you have been functioning for the next 20 years. It won't impact you. Even if this isn't true, they want to hear it. And I really understand this, because our normal human reaction is to want to continue to have the life that we have, to have stability. And there are few of us who like changing everything that is around us. We want to make sure that our families are safe, that they have you know, something to look forward to. In this case, we're asking a lot of people. We're asking them to think about what will the future look like, and to become involved in creating that future. I think it should be seen as an opportunity. And this is, it just needs a switch in how you approach it. So I hope there will be a lot of people in these communities who will see it as that opportunity. But I also know that it will be difficult for a lot of people. And I think people, we who come there and talk to them about this change really need also to understand this, that it's okay for you to be afraid. For me, always what I come back to is, I remember in 2017 when I started talking in my local communities about this, I had, because of course I grew up in this town, and I know a lot of people who are working now in different sectors. And a mining friend of mine walked up to me and said, you know, Miłka, I understand everything you're saying. You know, I also know that we have to change. But I need a timeline. I need to know when this is happening, and I need to know what I'm supposed to do. When will this happen? How can I approach it? How am I supposed to make sure that my family is okay? And I think we really need to have these conversations, that this is what people are worried about. A couple of days ago, I was also at a conference, actually here in Kustendil, and someone was talking about how, you know, very frequently for older people, they weren't thinking about what these change means for them. They were thinking about, you know, will this town be able to keep the young people from leaving? Will we be able to create a community to which these young people will want to return? And I think it's very good that people are asking these questions, but we really need to learn to talk about how to solve them. One of the biggest obstacles, I think, to really talking about these questions is sometimes when you have people come in and not tell the truth. We, as people who are working on the energy transition, know that coal will be phased out. We know more or less by when it will happen.